Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but here I am. I'm 34M, my wife is 32F. We've been together for almost 9 years, married for 6. Until a few months ago, I would have told anyone that our relationship was not perfect, but solid. The kind where you argue about dishes and money sometimes, but you still sit on the couch together at night and send each other dumb memes. But if I'm being honest, the cracks probably started earlier than I wanted to admit. My wife has always had a sharp personality. She's blunt, sometimes brutally so. Friends call it honesty, but sometimes it feels more like she enjoys winning arguments than actually solving anything. Over the years, I noticed she'd lie about small stuff too. Little things that didn't even seem worth lying about. Like saying she worked late when she actually went out with coworkers. Or telling me she never talked to some guy anymore, when I'd later see his name pop up again. Nothing huge, just enough to make me pause sometimes. Every time I asked, she'd brush it off or turn it around on me. Why are you always suspicious? You're being paranoid. Do you seriously not trust me? And honestly, I started wondering if maybe she was right. Then about 4 months ago, things started getting weird in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. It started with her phone. She used to leave it anywhere: kitchen counter, couch, bathroom sink. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand, face down on every surface. New passcode. Notifications turned off. The first time I noticed it, I joked about it. She didn't laugh. Instead, she snapped, "Why are you looking at my phone?" That moment stuck with me. It felt like the air in the room changed. And that was the first time my gut told me something was seriously wrong, even though I still had no idea how bad things were about to get. After the phone thing, I started noticing other little changes. The kind you almost miss if you're not paying attention. My wife suddenly started working late a lot more. Like a lot. 2 or 3 nights a week she'd text me around 7:30 or 8 saying something like, "Big deadline, don't wait up." At first I didn't think much of it. Her job can get busy, but then the stories didn't always line up. One night, she said she was stuck finishing reports with her team. The next day, while we were having coffee, she casually mentioned grabbing dinner alone because she was starving after work. Another time she said everyone stayed late together, but when I asked how her co-worker Mark handled it, "I know he has kids," she paused for a weird second and then said, "Oh, he actually left earlier." Stuff like that. Tiny contradictions. And every time I pointed one out, she'd get defensive instantly. "Why are you interrogating me? You're acting crazy. You must really want to find a problem." So I stopped asking. But the weirdest thing started happening with her weekends. For years we had a routine. Saturday morning coffee, groceries together, sometimes a movie or visiting friends. Pretty normal married life. Then suddenly she had plans. A lot of plans. Girls' nights, work drinks, random birthday parties for people I'd never heard of before. And here's the part that made my stomach twist. She stopped inviting me. Whenever I asked if I could come, she'd say things like, "It's just coworkers. You wouldn't know anyone. It's kind of a girl's thing." Which was strange, because those things had never been a problem before. One Saturday night, she got dressed up way more than usual. Like seriously dressed up. New black dress, makeup, heels. Not the kind of outfit you wear to casual drinks with coworkers. I remember leaning on the doorframe, watching her get ready. I joked, "Wow, who are you trying to impress?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being weird again." Then she left, and I wish I could say that's when I started digging for answers. But the truth is, I still wanted to believe her. That would turn out to be my biggest mistake. About 2 weeks after that Saturday night, the first really strange thing happened. It was a Tuesday, totally normal day. I got home from work around 6, made some pasta, and texted my wife asking if she wanted me to save her some. She replied, "Don't wait for me. Late again tonight." At that point, it almost felt routine. Around 9:30, I was sitting on the couch watching some random show when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. At first, I assumed it was spam, but when I opened it, my stomach dropped. The message just said, "I think you should know what your wife is doing." That was it. No name, no explanation, just that. I stared at the screen for a good minute, thinking it had to be some kind of prank. Maybe someone texting the wrong number. Then another message came through. This one had a photo. My hands were actually shaking when I opened it. The picture showed my wife. She was standing outside a bar I recognized downtown. The photo was clearly taken from across the street. It wasn't super close, but it was definitely her. Same black jacket she had worn earlier that day. And she wasn't alone. She was laughing with some guy I had never seen before. They were standing way too close for it to look casual. I felt that weird hollow feeling in my chest that people talk about, but you never really understand until it happens. I immediately texted back, "Who is this?" No answer. A few minutes later, I tried calling the number. It went straight to voicemail. I sat there on the couch staring at the photo for what felt like forever, trying to convince myself there was some reasonable explanation. Coworker, friend, random coincidence. But the voice in the back of my head kept saying the same thing. Something is very wrong. And that night, for the first time in our entire relationship, I started wondering if my wife might actually be cheating on me. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I kept staring at that photo on my phone like it was going to magically explain itself if I looked at it long enough. My brain kept jumping between explanations. Maybe it's just a coworker. Maybe someone is messing with me. Maybe the angle makes it look worse than it is. Around midnight, my wife finally came home. I heard the door unlock, and I immediately pretended to be asleep on the couch. I don't even know why. I just wasn't ready to confront her yet. She walked in quietly, kicked off her shoes, and paused when she saw me. "Why are you sleeping out here?" she asked. I mumbled something like, "Fell asleep watching TV." She shrugged and went to the bedroom. Normal. Completely normal. That almost made it worse. The next morning, I decided to test something. While we were drinking coffee, I casually asked, "So how was work last night?" She didn't hesitate for a second. "Ugh, awful. We stayed late finishing reports." My chest tightened, because I knew exactly where she actually was. At least, according to that photo. I pushed a little further. "Who stayed late with you?" She started listing coworkers. Names I've heard 100 times before. Completely confident. No hesitation. No nervousness. It was such a smooth lie that for a split second, I actually doubted myself again. But the photo was still sitting in my phone. Later that day, I texted the unknown number again. "Why did you send me that?" For hours, nothing. Then around 3 p.m., another message came in. This one was just 5 words. "Because you deserve the truth." And then another photo appeared. This one was much worse. Much harder to explain away. The second photo hit me like a punch to the chest. It was taken inside the bar. My wife was sitting at a table with the same guy from the first picture. The lighting was dim, but you could clearly see them leaning toward each other. His hand was on her arm. Not a friendly tap. Not a casual gesture. The kind of touch that makes your stomach drop when you realize what it probably means. I zoomed in on the image like that was going to somehow change what I was seeing. It didn't. For a few minutes, I just sat at my desk at work staring at my phone, feeling this weird mix of heat and cold all at once. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking again. I texted the number immediately. "Who are you? How do you have these?" This time they actually replied, "I work with your wife." That alone made my heart start racing. I asked which department. They ignored the question. Instead, they sent another message. "She's been seeing him for a while." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My brain immediately rejected it. "A while? No way." I asked the obvious question. "Who is he?" The reply came back a minute later. "His name is Daniel. He doesn't know she's married." That sentence messed me up more than the photos, because suddenly it wasn't just betrayal. It meant my wife had been lying to 2 people at the same time. I sat there trying to process that when another message came through. "I'm sorry. I debated sending this for weeks." Then the final text. "But you should know the truth before things get worse." I remember reading that line over and over, because in my head I kept thinking, how much worse could it possibly get? I had no idea that within the next few days, everything was going to explode. That afternoon at work was a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. Emails, meetings, people talking around me. None of it registered. My brain just kept replaying the same thoughts. How long has this been going on? Who the hell is Daniel? Is this real? Part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't. So I did something I'd never done before in our entire marriage. I checked her social media. My wife doesn't post a ton, but she uses it enough. Pictures with friends, occasional work stuff, random selfies. At first everything looked normal. Then I noticed something weird. There were comments from a guy named Daniel on a few of her older posts. Nothing crazy, just things like "great photo" or "looks fun." But when I clicked his profile, my stomach twisted again. Because the guy in his profile picture was the same guy from the photos. Same face, same beard, same stupid confident smile. I started scrolling through his page, and that's when another detail hit me. There were pictures of him at the exact same bar from the photo. Multiple times, sometimes with friends. sometimes tagged with coworkers. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten. A photo from about 2 months earlier. He was at a group dinner, and sitting 2 seats away from him was my wife. She was tagged in the picture. The caption said, "Team Night Out," which meant one thing. The anonymous number had been telling the truth. They really did work together. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling like I was slowly putting together a puzzle I never wanted to see. Then I noticed something else. Under one of his photos, my wife had commented. 3 simple words. "Missed this night." That was the moment the denial finally started cracking. Because that didn't sound like coworkers. That sounded like something else entirely. And suddenly I had one question I couldn't stop thinking about. How much had she been hiding from me? That night I decided I needed to see things for myself. Up until that point, everything I had came from photos and messages from a stranger. As bad as it looked, part of me kept thinking maybe there was still some explanation. So when my wife texted around 6:45 p.m. saying, "Working late again tonight," I made a decision. Instead of going home, I drove downtown, straight to the bar from the photos. The whole drive my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. I kept arguing with myself the entire way. "This is crazy. You're overreacting. What if she's not even there?" But another voice kept saying, "What if she is?" I parked about half a block away and just sat in my car for a few minutes trying to calm down. Finally, I walked toward the bar. Through the front windows, you could see the inside pretty clearly. Dim lighting, people standing around with drinks, music loud enough that you could hear the bass from outside. And then I saw her. Right away. She was at the bar counter. And sitting next to her was him. Daniel. There was no confusion this time. No grainy photo, no weird angles. I was looking right at them. They were talking closely, leaning toward each other to hear over the music. And then something happened that made my stomach flip. He put his hand on her lower back, and she didn't move it away. In fact, she leaned closer to him. I stood there frozen on the sidewalk watching this play out like some kind of nightmare. Then, about 30 seconds later, he leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick peck, a full kiss, right there at the bar. I don't think I've ever felt anger hit me that fast in my life. For a second I seriously considered walking in and blowing everything up right there. But instead, I turned around and walked back to my car. Because suddenly I realized something. I didn't just want a confrontation. I wanted the truth. And the only way I was going to get that was to make her explain it to my face. The drive home felt surreal. I kept replaying the moment in my head. The way she leaned into him. The kiss. How comfortable they looked together. Like it wasn't new. Like it was something they'd done 100 times before. By the time I got home, my anger had cooled into something heavier. A kind of numb determination. I sat in the living room with the lights off and waited. Around 11:15 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. The front door opened, and she walked in like any other night, kicking off her shoes and dropping her purse on the table. Then she saw me sitting there. "Jesus," she said, jumping a little. "Why are you sitting in the dark like that?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. For the first time in years, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Finally, I asked one simple question. "How was work tonight?" She sighed dramatically and tossed her jacket on the chair. "Long, exhausting. Same as always." Another lie. Immediate. Effortless. I nodded slowly. "Still doing reports?" "Yeah," she said, already heading toward the kitchen. "Deadlines are brutal this week." That's when I pulled out my phone. "I drove by your office tonight." She froze. Just for a second. Then she turned around, arms crossed, already defensive. "Why would you do that?" I stood up and took a step closer. "Because you weren't there." Her expression changed instantly. Not guilt, not panic. Annoyance. Like I was the problem. "You seriously drove by my work?" she said. "That's actually kind of creepy." I felt my jaw tighten. So I opened my phone and showed her the photo. The one from the bar. Her face next to Daniel's. The room went completely silent. For the first time that night, she didn't have an immediate response. But the way she reacted next honestly shocked me even more than the lie. She stared at the photo for maybe 3 seconds. Then she rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. "Oh my God," she said, shaking her head. "Is that what this is about?" I felt like I'd just been slapped. "What this is about?" I repeated. "You're kissing another guy." She threw her hands up like I was being ridiculous. "It's not what you think." That sentence made something snap in my head. "I watched you kiss him," I said. "Tonight. At the bar." For the first time, she hesitated. Just a small pause. Then she sighed dramatically and sat down at the kitchen table like she was exhausted by the whole conversation. "His name is Daniel," she said. "He's a co-worker." "I know. We went out with the team after work." "That's not what it looked like." She leaned back in the chair and crossed her arms. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I actually laughed at that point. Not because it was funny. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when you can't believe what you're hearing. "I saw you kiss him," I said again. She shrugged. "People get a little drunk sometimes." I just stared at her. "You're married." "Yeah, I know," she said flatly. The casual way she said it made my stomach drop. I asked the question that had been sitting in my head all day. "How long has this been going on?" She immediately shook her head. "It hasn't." Then explained the photos. "What photos?" So I showed her the second one, the one where his hand was on her arm. She barely looked at it. "That's nothing." Then she said something that honestly made my blood boil. "You're acting paranoid again." Again, like this was somehow my fault. And that's when I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just lying. She was completely comfortable lying. At that moment, I felt everything inside me collapse. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, all tangled together so tightly it was hard to breathe. I sank into the couch, staring at her like I was trying to memorize every detail. Every expression, every smirk, every casual shrug. Because this was the person I had loved for almost a decade, and now I didn't even recognize her. I tried to stay calm, tried to ask one last time. "Tell me the truth. No excuses. No lies. How long?" She sighed, leaned back, and gave me that same sharp, dismissive look she always gives when she doesn't care about my feelings. "Months," she admitted finally. I felt like someone had shoved a knife in my chest. Months. Months of lies, of fake work nights, of weekend plans that weren't for work at all. Months of her pretending to be my partner while sneaking around behind my back. "Why?" was all I could manage to whisper. She looked at me like I was stupid. "Because I wanted to. Because you're boring sometimes. Because it was exciting. There's no other reason." I honestly don't know if I laughed or cried. Maybe both. I just sat there, shaking, trying to process the cruelty of it. Then she leaned forward, suddenly smirking. "And besides," she said, "you were always snooping anyway. You practically invited this." That line, that twisted, unapologetic line, broke something in me. Not anger this time. Not even betrayal. Something colder. Resignation. Pain. Because I realized she didn't feel guilty. She didn't regret it. She didn't even see it as a problem. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I felt. But I couldn't. Instead, I just sat there and let the silence stretch, letting the truth sink in. The next few days were hell. I barely slept. I couldn't eat. Every little sound in the apartment made me jump. Footsteps, doors closing, even her laugh on a Zoom call with a friend. Every time I saw her, I kept expecting her to act normal, to be the woman I married. But she wasn't. She was distant, cold, and somehow still sharp, like she could cut me with her words even while pretending nothing had happened. I tried talking to her. Really talking. "Do you love me at all?" I asked one night, voice barely above a whisper. She just stared at me for a second, smirked, and said, "I love me. Don't make this about you." That hit me harder than anything. I felt betrayed on every level. Emotionally, mentally, even physically. The person I trusted the most had been living a completely separate life for months. And the worst part? She didn't even feel bad about it. I started noticing everything differently. Every lie, every small manipulation, every little inconsistency suddenly made sense. Those little lies she told over the years weren't just quirks or personality traits. They were training, conditioning, proof she could lie, and I'd believe her until I didn't. I felt rage, yes, but more than that, I felt empty, hollow, like someone had taken the foundation of my life and yanked it out from under me. There were moments I wanted to confront her physically, moments I wanted to call Daniel and scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. I had to think. I spent hours just walking around the city at night, replaying every memory we had together and questioning what had ever been real. Every laugh, every trip, every "I love you" suddenly felt like it had a question mark after it. And in those long, sleepless walks, I realized something. I had to make a choice. I spent days weighing my options. Part of me wanted revenge. Part of me wanted to scream, to make her feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused. Part of me even thought about just leaving immediately, walking out the door and never looking back. But another part, the quieter, more rational part, started asking questions I couldn't ignore. Could this marriage survive? Was there anything left worth saving? Do I even want to save it if she feels nothing about what she did? I tried talking to her again, one last time. Do you even want to try to fix this? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. I don't know why you care so much. It's not like it matters. We can just move past it. Move past it. She didn't even see the destruction she had caused. Didn't understand the way trust works, how it gets chipped away with every lie, every secret. I realized then that it wasn't just about the affair. It was about the pattern, the lies, the way she manipulated every situation so she could have what she wanted without consequence. I couldn't stay in a marriage where my reality was constantly negotiable, where the person I loved most could just rewrite the rules whenever it suited her. So I made my decision. I started looking into lawyers. Not immediately, not angrily, methodically, calmly. Because the only way I could reclaim some sense of control over my life was to remove myself from the chaos she had created. It hurt like hell, more than anything I've ever felt. But I knew it was the only way I could survive this with my sense of self intact. Breaking the news to her was surreal. I sat her down one evening after work. We were in the living room, the same room where we'd laughed, argued, and shared years of our life. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. I can't do this anymore, I said. I can't live in a marriage built on lies. I can't trust you, and I can't keep pretending that I do. She tilted her head like she was bored. So what? You're leaving me? Yes, I said. I am. For the first time, she didn't have a snappy comeback. She looked annoyed, like I was inconveniencing her. I guess, okay, she said after a beat. Do what you want. Don't forget to pack your stuff. That was it. No tears, no guilt, no apology. Nothing. Just casual, almost indifferent acceptance. I felt a mix of relief and devastation. Relief because I finally had clarity, because I was taking control. Devastation because the person I trusted the most had shown me the absolute worst version of themselves, and it had been right under my nose for months. The next few weeks were a blur of packing, calls to lawyers, and emotional purges I didn't even realize I needed. I cried more in those days than I had in years, sometimes in the shower, sometimes in my car, sometimes just sitting on the floor staring at the wall. But slowly, the anger started to fade. The shock started to wear off. What replaced it was a quiet, resolute sadness. A recognition that I had been forced to let go of someone I loved, someone who had betrayed me completely. And in that sadness, I also started to feel something else, freedom. After the initial chaos, life started to feel strange but lighter. I moved into a small apartment not far from the city. No pictures on the walls, just the essentials. At first, it felt empty. Too empty. I missed her sometimes, even with everything she did. I missed the idea of her, the life we thought we were building. But every time I remembered the betrayal, the casual way she lied and dismissed me, I knew I had made the right choice. I started seeing a therapist, which honestly helped more than I expected. Talking through the shock, the anger, the grief, and finally the acceptance made a huge difference. I learned to separate my love for the person I thought she was from the reality of who she actually is. Friends rallied around me. Some didn't understand why I didn't just forgive her, but I realized forgiveness wasn't what I needed. I needed distance. I needed to rebuild my life without someone who could so casually destroy the trust one had given them. I even started doing little things for myself I had ignored for years, going for hikes, cooking new recipes, joining a local photography club. Every small step reminded me that I wasn't defined by her lies, that I could find happiness on my own. The wound is still there, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull. Some days I think about her and Daniel, and it still stings. But the difference now is that the sting doesn't control me anymore. I've reclaimed my life. Looking back, I've learned more about myself in these months than I ever did in all the years I spent with her. I learned that trust is fragile. That love alone isn't enough when respect and honesty are gone. That people can be cruel in ways you never expect. Not because they hate you, but because they care more about themselves than anything else. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, well, listen to your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Evidence matters. Keep track. Even if it hurts, clarity beats doubt. Protect yourself emotionally before you make any big decisions. You can't help someone who refuses to help themselves. And finally, it's okay to leave. It's okay to say, I deserve better. Because you do. I'm still healing. Some nights are harder than others. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have control over my own story. And that, more than anything, makes me feel alive again.